always great energy going into that stadium, and seeing all of the fans and being so excited to be around you and see you. Of course.
It's like the energy on this program. Welcome back to another edition of the Enough Said Show. My name's Dan Barreiro, joined as always by Justin Gaard and Lori Fisher.
Keeping that energy up.
Get the festivities going, although I'm wondering if I need to wear sunglasses for the rest of the show.
That's
London lavender.
This happened before.
Lori,
I did not think this was going to look like this
Friday
on
night
camera.
somewhere.
No,
it's Friday night.
It's a nice retro look, I think.
I told Justin earlier it's my London lavender look.
Oh, that's okay.
What do you think about
Getting ready
that?
for Hockey Moms weekend.
Good alliteration.
Testing it out a little bit.
Okay, let's move on.
All right.
4-0. The Vikings still undefeated after beating Green Bay. Now it's time for the big London game. They'll be taking on Aaron Rodgers for the first time since he joined the New York Jets. It will be quarterback duel against Sam Darnold, the freshly named NFC Offensive Player of the Month, leads the NFL in touchdowns. That game kicks off at 8:30 Sunday morning. Get your coffee, get some football on. Dan?
Well, it's interesting because in a short month, we've now reached the point where overconfidence going into this Jets game is our only enemy. I mean, we're now either number 1, 2, or 3 on all the power rankings. We've got the MVP of a quarterback. We've got the comeback player of the year at quarterback. We've got the coach of the year as well, and we probably have the defensive coach of the year as well, right? In B-Flow. So, and you were facing a very vulnerable-looking Jets team, where last week Aaron Rodgers and the Jets offense looked inept, no ability to get the ball downfield at all, and you say, well, this one should be easy. Maybe it will be. Yeah. But that's the next test, I guess, is can you withstand all of the love that you're now getting to say, but no reason that this can't be maybe the class team of the National Football Conference.
And I'm old enough to remember when we thought if they didn't win the Giants game, there was a legitimate chance that going into this London game, they would be winless.
That's right.
And that
How many times did we do that exercise on the radio show?
We said after the bye, when you take on Detroit, you're going to be 0-6 or whatever it is. If you don't win that Giants game, it shows you how smart we are, shows you how stupid we actually are, but also how surprising this whole thing is. And these are the best. I think I said it this week. Surprising successful seasons, I think, are more enjoyable to the average fan because expectations, let's be honest, were not very high, especially when J.J. McCarthy went down with his injury. Yep. A lot of this season we thought was going to be transition. We thought it was going to be handing the keys to the next franchise quarterback, and I don't know. Maybe they are. Maybe Sam Darnold is the next franchise quarterback. I don't know. I've had to change my tune a little bit on that, but I think we've talked about this too. There does seem to be a changing of the guard in the NFC, and of course we just got to October, so we don't know what San Francisco is going to be. We don't know what Dallas is going to be. We don't know what some of these other big-time NFC teams that have been the class for the last 5 or 6 years are going to look like, but they all seem like they're in various forms of disarray or at least transition, trying to figure themselves out. And meanwhile, the Vikings are just going about their business. And I think the overconfidence angle, Dan, is a good one because I think they started feeling really good about themselves at Lambeau last weekend. Certainly with Darnold trying to fit it into Aaron Jones, certainly with how KOC was kind of calling that game. I do think they were trying to get Aaron Jones a touchdown at his former stadium. I think they felt so good that it almost came back to bite them. Even if they had lost that game, I wouldn't have been in some kind of crazy panic because I do think this is a really good team, and it stuns me to say it a month into the season.
Well, they're at what, 28-0 was the lead? Now, there was a key test moment in this game that was, again, very encouraging. The Packers storm back. Yep. It's 28-22. And how did they get to 22? Touchdown and 2-point conversion, which is their way of saying, we're in this thing to steal it, 29-28. Crowd is insane. Yep. They just had strip sacked Darnold on the previous possession. And on first down from the 30, what do the Vikings do?
Throw it. 17-yard
pass to JJ, which shut up the crowd. They got eventually into field goal range, which turned out to be largely, you could say, the difference in the game. So we're still waiting for them to have to play from behind. Yeah. But this was a good test that was pretty close to that because it looked like everything was changing at that point. And once again, the offense at that moment passed the test.
Hopefully we're going into that bye week 5-0.
London Lavender. London Lavender has spoken.
Well, even if you agree with the decision, it's still sad. After joining the Timberwolves 9 years ago, center Karl Anthony Towns is now with the New York Knicks. The Wolves trading him for 3 players and a protective first rounder, number 32, first pick overall in 2015, rookie of the year in his first season before making All-Star team, second in franchise history in points, rebounds, minutes. List goes on. Cat says the incredible fans will always hold a special place in his heart, Justin.
Yeah, as the 7-year-old guardsy, when this team showed up, this one was tough for me emotionally, as you know. That's why I'm not a general manager. Cat, to me, kind of represented the last of the Flip era, obviously, because it was Flip's #1 choice. We know Flip had a vision for what Karl could be here. We know that meant a lot to Karl, and obviously the KG angle, those two being tight, is a part of this thing as well. So it bums me out, and it doesn't really feel right that Cat's not going to be able to see this thing through. But how many times do I say it, Dan? It's not show friends. It is show business. And Tim Conley, as we've seen, is as aggressive a president of basketball operations as we've ever had here. I understand the reasons why they needed to do it, both financially and with the players that they got back. I think they got back some really good players, including Julius Randle, who I think is going to be an interesting fit here. We'll see if he's part of the long-term solution. And Dante DiVincenzo, a guy that they clearly wanted. They tried to get him in free agency a year ago. Why couldn't they do it? Because they couldn't afford him, because of the monies that they've already committed to other players. So all of this makes sense. I know they're trying to extend the Anthony Edwards window. You can't general manage emotionally, and that's why I'm not a general manager. But everyone, I think, Wolves fans are pulling for Cat in New York.
Everything that Tim Conley does, to me, says we're not messing around.
Right.
That doesn't mean he's always going to be right.
Yeah.
But it takes guts. It takes a certain attitude of aggressiveness, and it stands out so much in this town, especially contrasting with the embarrassment that the Twins franchise has become
to their neighbors down there,
basically from ownership on down. And you can say in this case, well, actually, the Wolves are saving some money, but it's not exactly as if they are at the bottom of the barrel in terms of payroll here. They did something to help their flexibility, and I give Conley credit because it's the natural thing to do. The easy thing to do is to say, we went to the conference finals.
Right.
We're going to bring back our 2 best players, and we're going to try to build with the draft choices, build around them to take it to the next step. He ends up getting an offer that he didn't think he was ever going to get, that ultimately, including DiVincenzo, who gives them a wing player off the bench like they've rarely had. I mean, that's a big upgrade, even if there's no question Cat is the best player in this trade. Randle and DiVincenzo as a twosome, I think, will improve this offense and give them, with DiVincenzo, more off the bench. And again, there are people who think that this is going to end up haunting the Wolves. They may end up right.
Sure.
I just admire having in this town a president of the sport that he is involved in.
30
saying,
seconds.
I don't care. I don't care what conventional wisdom says. My job is to try to bring a championship here. It should be so refreshing to fans who say, and I think we do say, you can't let sentiment get in the way.
Right.
And you do have to take some risks. And go back to Rudy. That was a big risk.
Huge. Yep.
And he was getting pounded, was Conley, on the basis of the way it went the first season. So
Enough said.
I love the big, it's another example of the big swing for a guy who has talked about trying to stay at the big boy table.
The Rudy trade, what they did in the draft this year,
right?
Nobody saw coming, to aggressively trade up in the first round to get a top 10 pick coming off a Western Conference Finals, and now this. And by the way, Randle, you're going to get a motivated Randle because he wants another contract, whether it's with the Wolves or another team after the player option year of next year.
And real quick, they're less finessey with both these guys. That's the one rip I think was fair despite their success last year. A little, you want a little bit more physicality. Randle is that, for sure. And so even DiVincenzo as a wing player brings a little of that element, which I know was important to Conley.
And if you didn't read John Krasinski's article on Cat in The Athletic, you should.
Well, you also could have listened to our show where he laid out exactly that story. Lori, thank you.
I just messaged him and said I'm very proud of him. He's
I
such a
couldn't
good
hear you
writer.
over your shirt. I'm sorry. My IFB isn't really working. I couldn't hear what you said.
Okay, the semifinals all tied. The Lynx and Suns split the first 2 games in their second round series. Now they're in Connecticut with a couple new awards. Earlier this week, Cheryl Reeve won Coach of the Year and Executive of the Year. Lynx star Nafisa Collier was named Defensive Player of the Year. Dan?
Well, it's a good, tight matchup, I think.
Yeah.
What I think we saw from the first 2 games is that The Lynx are playing a team that's not going to let them play as free and easy offensively as they have played this year. Now, the good news is the Lynx also play very tough defensively, right? So we're seeing slogs so far. So part of me says what this is going to come down to ultimately is this is the best the Lynx are the best three-point shooting team in the league during the season.
Right.
Can they hit the shots? You know, because they really have it on a consistent basis. But this is not going to be easy at all, you can tell, because they're up against a team, I think, that mentally seems almost just about as strong as they are. And it's basically who can survive the other. That's how it's felt to me over the course of the first two games in Minnesota.
Is how it should be. These are two of the top three teams all season long. The top three seeds, as we've talked about, were in that position pretty much from the jump this year. The first quarter the other night, I believe, qualifies as what we used to call an eye bleeder, where it's just neither team can do anything.
Right.
And you wonder about tonight, which is a huge game, obviously. You don't
do we call it pivotal?
I call it pivotal.
Best of five?
I think so. Especially, you don't want to be facing elimination on Connecticut's home court in a couple of nights. So you got to steal the game that they stole from you in game one. And who's it going to be? Is it going to be Nafisa Collier, who obviously has it in her, or the other night it was other players that you don't necessarily associate with taking the big shot, talking about the point guard Courtney Williams. She seems to enjoy the muck, right? She seems to enjoy these moments. She seemed to enjoy getting into it with various members of Connecticut's team.
There's some good feistiness in this
It's great. It's everything you should want in a, because remember, this is the semis. The winner goes to the finals. This is the equivalent of what the Wolves just did, the Western Conference Finals. So it should be tough to win this round, and it's been fun.
When people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers.
Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do, we'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share.
Welcome back to Minnesota. The first and only vice presidential debate took place on Tuesday night. It was a very civil, policy-based debate between the candidates, Senator J.D. Vance and Governor Tim Walz. Depending on which side you lean, you most likely thought your candidate won. What are your key takeaways, guys? I texted you throughout the debate and didn't hear back from either one of you.
We were focused. We were staying present.
I'm glad you're not bitter.
Hold on, I'm doing my Governor Walz. Yeah. Hang on, I'm writing that down. Hang on. Hey, what?
I said, drink when you hear in Minnesota, drink when you hear my three beautiful children, and drink when we got a lot to get to tonight.
You were pretty buzzed by the end of the debate, I'm guessing, Lori.
He definitely made us understand he was from Minnesota.
One Minnesota, for sure.
Yeah, he did. Go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to say, boy, I really nailed this one. I had predicted that this was going to be as uncivilized a debate as we've had maybe in the last 4 or 5 decades. I really thought it was going to be vicious and ugly, and it was anything but that, to the point where a person who should remain nameless thought that maybe the two candidates should actually run together.
The ticket America needs.
Exactly, which is an interesting deal. So we can all say, well, that was kind of a reminder of what it can be like without sort of the Trump toxicity dealing, kind of permeating the air. That said, I thought for most of the night, the governor of the great state of Minnesota was the deer in the headlights guy, man.
Yep.
I thought he looked scared. I thought he looked nervous. I thought he had several openings that he did not take advantage of. It's the first time, we just talked about this last week, it's the first time I felt like it seemed too big for him.
Exactly.
I really thought he was being routed. The only thing that saved him, I think, was the late knockout punch he offered when he asked Vance the key question. Well, did your guy lose or not?
Right.
4 years ago, and he's, of course, afraid to say it.
I'm focused on the future,
I'm focusing on the future, which, to a certain extent, that's the disqualifying question. That's the game, set, match. That should be it. But I think overall, probably, given Vance's low unlikability, according to the polls, he probably overall raised it a little bit. And I thought the governor, I thought Walz was awful, embarrassed. It was almost one of those sort of like you're squirming feeling for him regarding his trying to answer the question of another slip up on whether he was in Hong Kong during when Tiananmen Square took place. That was an awful, whatever you want to say, own or apology or, yeah, I'm wrong. What was the term he used about himself? I'm kind of a knucklehead.
Kind of a knucklehead. Get caught up in the rhetoric.
That's letting yourself off the hook too easily.
Well, and I get it when you compare it to the disadvantage he and others have is that the other side, specifically the president, I mean, we're used to it, right?
Correct.
We're used to just him blowing by the truth on everything.
We're grading on a different curve.
Which is unfair, but also you should know that people, clearly not enough people care about January 6th, right? To make it disqualifying, which I think is scary.
Half the country
We gotta move
apparently
on.
doesn't, yeah.
Exactly right. So I think that's scary. But
agree.
when you are trying to take the high road of we're going to tell you the truth and we're going to be honest, you can't have I get caught up in the
No, if
rhetoric.
you're everyman guy,
Yeah.
everyman guy isn't a guy who's embellishing stuff or
Right.
adding some stuff to the record or subtracting some stuff about the DWI. That's not everyman guy.
Right.
Enough said.
And
We're
again,
almost-
I don't think that's fair, but
No.
that's the reality.
We're almost
Right.
exactly
Yeah.
1 month away from Election Day. The Twins wrapped up their season with no postseason. Team owner Joe Pohlad says he doesn't think the payroll is connected to the tough outcome. The Twins did fire several coaches, and the Twins president announced today Senior Vice President and General Manager Thad Levine is out after 8 seasons. What needs to be done in the offseason? Can you do it in 2 minutes, Dan?
Yeah, the owner needs to be fired. That's the problem. But of course, as we know, as the cliche goes, you can't fire owners. I can't tell you how clueless this particular Pohlad is. And again, maybe it's like, if you're a Pohlad, you're a Pohlad. And,
Right.
and there's nothing you can't rise above the tone deafness that many of the Pohlads have tended to show. To suggest that, well, resources, hey, we were in first place, or we were, fighting for
In the
first
mix,
place for
yep.
3/4 of the season. So our payroll was fine, finances were fine, resources were fine. Leaves out so much about the vulnerability regarding the rotation as the season went on, the unwillingness to spend a dime to bring in more money during the trade deadline to get a little bit of help. It's if you're a Twins fan, in all honesty, I don't know how you're not insulted enough
You
at
have
this
to
point
be.
to say,
You have to
I'm
be.
out.
You
I'm
have to
out.
be.
Get back to me 2 or 3 years from now when either you sell the team or you have your moment with God where you go, well, from a business standpoint, I'm killing my own business if I continue to operate the way the Twins are operating.
Our friend Aaron Gleeman from The Athletic did a big piece on this. He obviously asked the questions that elicited those ridiculous answers from my generation of Pohlad, who, as I've said, I had really high hopes for, and he's coming nowhere near those high hopes. Relative to the league, if the Twins do what they say they're committed to doing, which is, you would say, is very big of them, spend what they spent this year, $130 million, they're still $50 million short of where they should be spending relative to the rest of the league, not relative to the Dodgers, not relative to the Yankees or the Mets.
We're not asking them to spend that
30
kind of money.
seconds.
Nobody is.
We have a saying in Minnesota, Dan. We're very reasonable, right? We're not expecting the world, but we are expecting at least an honest effort. And I guess I give him credit for being honest with everybody and saying, I'm running the business here. You guys can like it or not, because that's essentially what he's saying. So now I do put it back on the fans and go, you're the ones that have to tell them it's not good enough anymore. You're the ones that have to stop buying the tickets.
But you know what? To a certain extent, they already have.
They have, but I think it needs to be even more.
I agree, but they were like 300,000 below their projections.
Yeah.
It's unprecedented for a team that just came off the playoffs to lose as much revenue as they thought they did because their attendance figures were so much more paltry than they had projected.
Joe Pohlad, by the way, also needs a Mark Wilf like Ziggy has.
Yes.
Remember Ziggy used to speak for the Vikings?
And does it have to be another Pohlad? Can it be anybody else?
It's got to be a Pohlad, but they need someone out front that can articulate some stuff.
Levine
Sorry, Lori.
being gone, real quick, I don't know if he's meant as a fall guy. I think he wants to run the whole thing, and he wasn't ever going to run it here because Falvey was the guy. So I don't know if this is meant he's necessarily the fall guy, because I don't think it's going to take any of the pressure off. Do you?
Next up.
No.
Pete Rose, one of baseball's most polarizing stars, passed away this week, known as Charlie Hustle, and for his brash and gritty play. But the all-time hits leader also had a bit of a side hustle. In 1989, he was permanently banned from the MLB after accusations he gambled on games, an accusation he later admitted to. 83 years old, Dan.
Integrity, when he was a player, when you talk about baseball integrity, which is, as a fan, you're looking for what? Effort all the time. Never cheating anybody, always doing Charlie Hustle. That's the nickname. He literally epitomized that, maybe more than any player who ever lived. Unfortunately, he did the exact opposite as a manager. He did surrender the integrity of the game or call it into question. People wondering, are you making that move as a manager because you think that's going to help your team win?
Right.
Or are you making that move because you got $5,000 on the game? That's unforgivable to me. Hall of Fame stuff, go ahead. But it's the great contradiction of just how different he was as a player in terms of what he turned to when he became a big league manager.
A very complicated legacy, right? And I think I'm still not convinced he ever wanted to be reinstated. I know that's probably
30.
cynical of me. In terms of the Hall of Fame, I think he made a lot of money off being the one left out. You could go see him at any point in Vegas, right? signing autographs, doing gambling appearances, the whole bit. I think it was too much of his identity post-baseball life. I know he had multiple chances to kind of get back in, right, with different commissioners and different players. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, to your point, he had a meeting with Bud Selig. They said, here's what we got to do. They shook hands like he was going to do it. What's the first thing he did? He went to a casino or had another appearance related to that sort of thing. And so maybe you're right, that deep down,
he just couldn't do it.
He sort of liked the role of being the contrarian
I want to get to one more death
and
this
the
week.
rebel on this.
Basketball Hall of Famer Dikembe Mutombo also passed away this week. He was just 58 years old. Not only is he remembered as one of the best defensive players in the NBA history, but being a role model off the court, being the league's first global ambassador and focusing on making the world just a better place. And that finger wag of his he was known for, Dan?
It still happens.
It still happens.
I mean, people are still doing the finger wag.
It's the finger wag and the smile.
Yeah.
He had one of those smiles that I can just envision it without even seeing it on the screen. And everybody who, the folks who knew him said the work that he did back in his home country,
right,
particularly as it pertains to building, many things, but certainly a hospital.
Yep.
That's really the lasting legacy. He was one of those guys. Sam Mitchell said it with us. He did, in the end, he said, he tried to make everybody better by stuff he did well beyond basketball, where we can all mythologize these guys too much.
And that video and that image when his 8 seed Denver Nuggets knocked off the #1 Seattle Seahawks, as good
Supersonics.
Supersonics, that's right. Did I say Seahawks? Yeah.
Seahawks,
Supersonics. Yeah. As good a basketball image, sports image, life image. I mean, I'm 42 years old. Yep. I can remember that series. That team changed how they do the playoff format. The 8 seed knocking off the 1 seed. It was 3 out of 5 in those days. Him in the lane on the ground with the ball, as good as it gets.
Pure joy.
We'll be right back with the lightning round. Welcome to the lightning round. The Big Ten changed how they call onside kicks after the Gopher loss against Michigan last weekend. Now, we can't say if they kept the ball, they would have won, but still, Justin.
Yeah, usually rules like this don't get changed when they affect a Minnesota team negatively until after the season. I'm thinking about the NBA changing their replay rule as it pertains to Kyrie Irving fouling Jaden McDaniels in Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals. I'm totally over that, as you can tell. This is obviously part of the story, but the key is the team can't make it the story. There was a first half that was played where they had too many critical errors. It made it almost impossible to come back. They needed everything to go right. How they address that part of it is probably more important than how they address what happened at the end, which would have been fun to see him with the ball, to see what would have happened there in the Big House, because things had turned.
The Twin Cities Marathon is this Sunday. Remember, it was canceled last year, last minute, due to extreme heat, Dan.
I don't remember that, but I think we got better conditions to
It's going to be beautiful on Sunday.
This whole September into October has been outstanding. Will you be racing this year?
I am not racing.
You doing a 10 mile?
I am working water stop number 10.
Okay.
At 20.6 miles, 4.6 if you're running the 10 mile.
Okay,
I will be giving out water with the Maple Grove High School cross country.
Is that out of the goodness of your heart?
Yes.
Love that.
That's impressive.
And I hear you're going to stop by mile 24 too at some point. That'll be good. Next.
Rapper Eminem is going to be a grandpa. His daughter Haley, who was mentioned in many of his songs over the years, is pregnant with her first child. She got married last spring.
Right?
Justin's very excited about this.
No, I'm wrecked emotionally by this. Haley is about to have a baby. Eminem is a grandpa, Lori.
That's just not even possible.
This should floor us. You're next, Lori Fisher.
Technically, all three of us could be not you.
Yeah, not me quite yet.
Be careful,
we're
Lori.
yeah, you're right. That doesn't work out. The math doesn't work out.
You're next, Lori.
Be careful. Don't get into the ageism stuff.
Right.
Eminem's a grandpa, though. That video, by the way, just ruined me.
He's 51.
I know.
Yeah, that's great. I still
Lori,
thought he was
we're
in his
getting
40s.
older. It's not the 90s anymore.
And finally,
time stops for no one, Lori.
Before the Vikings headed to London, the team tried to learn some lingo. An Instagram post had players guessing some UK slang. I want to ask you guys, do you know what
this is a surprise.
the word "foff" means?
No.
No clue.
Do I want to?
To foff.
I don't know.
I'm afraid to ask.
Yeah.
It means to fuss over something that's annoying. Like stop.
Don't foff over it?
Over that.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Don't foff over what we said before
Right.
the show. We didn't mean it.
Enough said. Have a good one.
Okay.
Okay. No foffing tonight.
Keep your fopping to yourself.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay. I know,
If
this
we
is
want to
awkward.
stay on the air.
We didn't have any other words. That was the one we picked. Of all the lingo.
Very odd lightning round.
I'm foffing over it.